This one is for the history buffs. In this video, we'll take a closer look at some of the mightiest warships of the Second World War. So grab a snack and get comfy, and let's get into it. The Nagato-class battleships. The Nagato-class battleships, comprising the Nagato and its sister ship Mutsu, stand as significant examples of naval engineering and military might in the early 20th century. Designed for the Imperial Japanese Navy towards the end of World War I, these super dreadnought battleships were the last of Japan's pre-treaty capital ships. They were also the first to be equipped with 41-centimeter guns, surpassing the then standard 15 inches. This remarkable feat positioned the Nagato class at the forefront of naval firepower during their time. The lead ship, Nagato, often served as a flagship and was involved in various humanitarian and military missions. In the aftermath of the devastating Great Kanto earthquake in 1923, both Nagato and Mutsu played crucial roles in delivering supplies to the survivors, showcasing their utility beyond warfare. The interwar period saw significant modernizations for these battleships between 1933 and 1936. Improvements were made to their armor and machinery, and their superstructures were rebuilt in the distinctive pagoda mast style. These changes not only enhanced their combat capabilities, but also reflected the evolving naval warfare strategies and technological advancements of the time. Their role in World War II was marked by pivotal moments. Nagato notably served as the flagship of Admiral Isoroku Yamato during the infamous attack on Pearl Harbor, which took place on December 7, 1941. And of course, this event marked the commencement of the Pacific War. Both ships participated in the Battle of Midway in June of 1942, however, they didn't engage in combat. Mutsu's fate was more turbulent compared to her sister ship. She participated actively in various conflicts, including the Battle of the Eastern Solomons in August of 1942, before returning to Japan in early 1943. However, tragedy struck in June of that year when one of the Mutsu's aft magazines exploded, resulting in the loss of 1,121 visitors and crew, ultimately destroying the ship. The Imperial Japanese Navy investigated this incident and controversially concluded that it was the work of a disgruntled crew member, a decision that's been debated by historians. So the exact cause is unknown to this day. Nagato, meanwhile, spent the initial years of the war mostly in training within Japanese waters. But in mid-1943, she was transferred to Truk and finally saw combat during the Battle of the Philippine Sea the following year. She was primarily attacked by American aircraft, though. Her first and only use of main armament against enemy vessels occurred during the Battle of Lake Gulf in October of 1944, after which she sustained minor damage. As the war progressed and resources became scarce, particularly fuel, the IJN decided against fully repairing Nagato. So she was converted into a floating anti-aircraft platform and assigned to coastal defense duties. Post-war, Nagato had a unique fate. She was used as a target for U.S. nuclear weapons tests during the Operation Crossroads in mid-1946. Surviving the first test with minimal damage, she eventually succumbed to the second test and sank, marking the end of an era for one of Japan's most formidable battleships. The story of the Nagato-class battleships is a reflection of the broader narrative of naval warfare in the first half of the 20th century. These ships witnessed the transition from traditional battleship engagements to the dominance of aircraft carriers and air power, which reshaped naval strategies and combat in World War II. Their design, service, and ultimate fates provide invaluable insights into the military history and technological advancements of the era. Next up, we take a closer look at the largest battleship ever built by the Royal Navy. But before we continue, if you're joining us for the first time, make sure you hit that subscribe button to unlock a treasure trove of incredible videos. And don't keep your thoughts to yourself. Drop a comment below and tell us what content you'd like to see next. The HMS Vanguard. HMS Vanguard, bearing the pennant number 23, was the epitome of British naval engineering and the final chapter in the long history of battleships in the Royal Navy. Commissioned after World War II, she was the only ship of her class, preceded by the Lion class and the King George V class. Built by John Brown and Company in Clydebank, Scotland between 1941 and 1946, Vanguard was the largest and fastest battleship in the Royal Navy, but she was also the last battleship to be built. The inception of Vanguard was a response to the growing threat posed by the combined fleets of Germany and Japan. The Royal Navy, anticipating being outnumbered, initiated the construction of the Lion-class battleships. However, the complexity and time required to manufacture the triple 16-inch turrets for the Lion class would delay her completion. So Vanguard was conceived as a modified Lion-class design, utilizing 4 twin 15-inch turrets available from previous ships, allowing for a quicker completion. Vanguard's construction journey was marked by several starts and stops, influenced by the changing tides of war and shifting priorities. Her design underwent multiple revisions to incorporate lessons learned from wartime experiences, such as improved underwater protection and enhanced fuel capacity. Despite these efforts, Vanguard wasn't completed until after the war, missing the chance to participate in the conflict. Her post-war service began with a significant task. In early 1947, Vanguard was chosen to transport King George VI and his family on the first royal tour of South Africa by a reigning monarch. This role highlighted her status not just as a warship, but as a symbol of national pride and royal prestige. Although initially slated for another royal tour of Australia and New Zealand in 1948, it was cancelled due to the King's declining health. Vanguard briefly served as the flagship of the Mediterranean Fleet in 1949, before returning to become the flagship of the Home Fleet Training Squadron. Throughout her career, she usually served as the flagship of her assigned unit, showcasing her significance within the Royal Navy. In the early 1950s, she participated in numerous training exercises with NATO forces, demonstrating her capabilities in a post-war military landscape. She even participated in the Coronation Review of 1953, marking Queen Elizabeth II's ascension to the throne. However, by 1955, the Admiralty announced that Vanguard would be put into reserve upon the completion of her refitting work, signaling the end of her active service. Vanguard's design was a testament to the culmination of British battleship evolution. She had a displacement over 51,000 long tons at full load and was capable of speeds of up to 30 knots thanks to her 4 steam turbine sets. Her armament was formidable, featuring 8 15-inch guns, 16 5¼ dual-purpose guns, and a host of Bofors 40mm anti-aircraft guns. Her armor was extensive, with a main belt thickness of up to 14 inches and a deck armor of up to 6 inches, providing robust protection against enemy fire. Despite her impressive capabilities, the advent of air power and missile technology during and after World War II rendered battleships like the Vanguard obsolete. The strategic importance of battleships had diminished, with aircraft carriers and submarines taking precedence in naval strategy. Vanguard was decommissioned on June 7, 1960. She was then sold for scrap, marking the end of an era for battleships in the Royal Navy. The Bismarck-class battleships, the Bismarck and the Tirpitz. The Bismarck-class battleships, including the Bismarck and its sister ship Tirpitz, were the epitome of Nazi Germany's Kriegsmarine naval prowess in the lead-up to and during the early years of World War II. As the largest and most powerful battleships commissioned by the Kriegsmarine, these fast battleships were a formidable presence, displacing over 41,000 metric tons and armed with an array of 8 15-inch guns. Capable of reaching speeds of up to 30 knots, they were a significant threat to Allied naval and merchant shipping. The genesis of the Bismarck class lay in the competitive naval expansion of the 1930s, spurred by the French Richelieu-class battleships. Designed with a traditional role in mind, that of engaging enemy battleships in home waters, the German Naval Command also saw potential in using these ships as long-range commerce raiders against British shipping in the Atlantic. This duality in strategic purpose mirrored the broader confusion and competing priorities within German naval construction during the decade. Bismarck was laid down in June 1936, and she was completed in September of 1940. Tirpitz followed closely behind her sister ship, with her keel laid in October of 1936 and completion in February 1941. Both ships were built in response to the emerging naval threats and as part of Hitler's ambitious plan to challenge naval powers with formidable surface vessels. Bismarck's operational career was brief yet impactful. In her only operation, Rheinuberg, she ventured into the North Atlantic, aiming to disrupt the crucial supply lines from North America to Britain. In the infamous Battle of the Denmark Strait, Bismarck achieved a tragic victory by sinking the HMS Hood, a pride of the British Royal Navy, and damaging the new battleship Prince of Wales. However, this success was short-lived. Bismarck was subsequently hunted by a relentless pursuit of British naval forces, culminating in a final engagement that saw her defeated and sunk. The debate over the exact cause of her sinking continues, with evidence suggesting a combination of battle damage, scuttling by her crew, and fatal damage inflicted by the Royal Navy's battleship Rodney and King George V. Tirpitz's career, on the other hand, was less marked by direct engagements and more by her strategic significance. Stationed in Norwegian waters, she acted as an intimidating fleet in being, deterring Allied naval operations and threatening the Arctic convoy routes to the Soviet Union. Despite being less active than her sister ship, Tirpitz faced numerous attempts by the Royal Navy and Royal Air Force to neutralize her threat, enduring repeated bombings. Her end finally came in 1944, though not through surface combat, but under the onslaught of Lancaster bombers equipped with tall boy bombs, leading to her capsizing. The design of the Bismarck class reflected the strategic and tactical dilemmas of the time. Initially conceived with a battery of 8 13-inch guns and a top speed of 30 knots, the design evolved in response to international naval developments, particularly the French and Italian naval programs. The final design boasted 15-inch guns, thick armor plating, and a sophisticated propulsion system, albeit with a displacement that strained the limits of existing German naval infrastructure and treaty constraints. Despite their imposing design and the apprehension they evoked among Allied sailors, the service history of the Bismarck-class battleships underscores the constraints faced by battleships during an era where air power and submarines were steadily asserting dominance. Their construction consumed vast resources, and their operational use reflected a strategic misalignment with the realities of naval warfare during World War II. The sinking of Bismarck and the neutralization of Tirpitz revealed the vulnerability of even the most powerful battleships to technologically innovative and determined adversaries. The Bismarck-class battleships and their legacy are a reminder of the fleeting dominance of ships on the high seas and the strategic miscalculations that can arise from overestimating the power of traditional naval assets in the face of changing warfare dynamics. The Yamato-class battleships. The Yamato-class battleships, represented by the iconic Yamato and Musashi, epitomized the pinnacle of Imperial Japanese Navy prowess and ambition in naval engineering leading up to World War II. These colossal vessels, boasting an unparalleled combination of sheer size and formidable armament, held the distinction of being the heaviest and most powerfully armed battleships ever constructed. With a displacement nearing 72,000 long tons at full load, they were equipped with the largest naval artillery ever installed on warships, a battery of 9 460mm or 18-inch guns capable of propelling 3,220-pound shells over a remarkable distance of 26 miles. And adding to this naval powerhouse, a third vessel, initially designated as a battleship, underwent a transformative evolution, being later reconfigured into the aircraft carrier Shinano. Constructed under extreme secrecy to prevent intelligence leaks to adversaries, particularly the United States, the Yamato and Musashi remained veiled in obscurity with their exact specifications becoming known to the Allies only later in the war. Both battleships were designed to achieve supremacy in the Pacific, embodying Japan's naval strategy and ambitions for regional dominance. The genesis of the Yamato class was rooted in Japan's naval expansionism and the strategic imperative to field a fleet capable of countering the numerically superior U.S. Navy. The design reflected a departure from the treaty limitations and embraced an unparalleled scale and firepower. The battleships were intended as the IJN's trump cards in the decisive battle doctrine, where they'd play a central role in a climatic engagement against enemy fleets. Despite their impressive design, both Yamato and Musashi spent much of their service in naval bases, only deploying occasionally in response to U.S. raids. Their operational use was constrained by the IJN's strategic defensive posture following early losses in the war. The growing threat from submarines and aircraft carriers didn't help either, which relegated these titans to primarily serving as fleet anchors. The fate of all three ships was sealed by U.S. Navy actions. Musashi fell to airstrikes in the Battle of Leyte Gulf in October of 1944, and that same year, Shinano was sunk by the submarine Archerfish shortly after her commissioning in November. Yamato met her end in April of 1945 during Operation 10 Go in a desperate voyage to Okinawa, where she was overwhelmed by air attacks. The design and construction of the Yamato class reflected Japan's industrial might and technical skill in shipbuilding. With a displacement surpassing any other battleship class, an armor scheme designed to withstand intense gunfire, and a propulsion system that granted them a top speed of 27 knots, these ships were marvels of their time. Their main armament of 18.1-inch guns was unprecedented, giving them a reach and a destructive power beyond any contemporary naval artillery. However, the strategic utility of the Yamato-class battleships, like the other battleships we've discussed today, was limited by the changing nature of naval warfare, which increasingly favored air power in submarine warfare over traditional battleship engagements. The Yamato-class battleships hold a significant place in Japanese cultural memory, representing both the peak of Japanese naval ambition and the end of the Imperial Japanese Navy's dominance in the Pacific. Their stories resonate in various forms of media and public memory, serving as enduring symbols of national pride, technological achievement, and the tragic futility of war. What other deadly machines or mighty weapons of war would you like us to make a video about? Let us know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.